You have prayed. You have whispered hope into silence. You have waited, believed, endured, and yet nothing moved. No door opened. No miracle came. The world remained stubborn, unmoved by your faith. They told you to pray harder, to believe more deeply, to surrender more completely. But no one dared to ask the forbidden question, what if the prayer itself was taught wrong? What if the failure was never yours? What if the words you were given were never meant to activate anything at all? I am not here to comfort you, I am here to disturb you. Because Jesus did not pray the way you were taught to pray. Before every miracle, before reality bent, before sickness vanished and laws dissolved, he entered a state that no institution wants you to remember. Why would they? A human who knows how to stand where Jesus stood does not beg, does not kneel in fear, does not wait for permission. Why did Jesus retreat into silence before power manifested? Why did he speak as if the miracle had already happened? Why did he warn others not to imitate him blindly, but to understand? And why were these instructions slowly erased, reframed, softened into harmless ritual? There is a second problem, more dangerous than unanswered prayer. You were trained to look outward for power that was always inward. That training built a prison you cannot see. Stay with me. What I am about to reveal was never lost. It was stopped. And if you are still listening, it may be because you were meant to remember. To understand what was taken from you, we must step back before doctrine hardened, before belief replaced experience. I am not asking you to trust my words. I am asking you to look where history itself still speaks. In the earlier strata of Jesus' teachings, preserved outside institutional control, prayer is never described as pleading. It is described as alignment. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says something that should unsettle you if you read it carefully. The kingdom is not coming by observation. It is already inside you and outside you. This is not metaphor. It is instruction, a statement about location, about state. In another saying, he declares that when the two become one, the impossible becomes inevitable. This is not moral teaching, it is technical language. The Gospel of Philip goes further, stating plainly that miracles do not come from belief, but from knowledge, gnosis, direct knowing. Here, prayer is not a request sent upward, but a condition generated inwardly. The text even warns that rituals without understanding are empty forms, shells without power. Then there is the Gospel of Mary, where inner authority is emphasized so strongly that it threatens any hierarchy built on mediation. Salvation, it says, is not granted. It is remembered. Unsurprisingly, this text was marginalized, questioned, nearly erased. These writings were not myths discovered last century by mystics. They were found in 1945 in Egypt, buried deliberately, preserved in what we now call the Nag Hammadi Library. Physical evidence, papyrus, ink, language that predates later theological revisions. The question is not whether these teachings existed. The question is why they disappeared. Now read the canonical text again. Jesus says in Gospel of Matthew to pray in secret, in the inner room, where no one sees. In Gospel of Mark, he says to believe that you have already received. In Gospel of John, he declares that those who understand him will do even greater works. These are not contradictions, they are fragments of a system. When doctrine was standardized after the Council of Nicaea, anything that suggested direct access to power, anything that reduced the need for intermediaries, anything that taught inner activation instead of external obedience, became dangerous. So it was reframed, then softened, then forgotten. What remains is a shadow of prayer, and what was removed is precisely what made it work. Now we cross a dangerous threshold where myth and mechanism meet, not to reduce mystery but to reveal why it works. Because what Jesus demonstrated does not violate reality. It operates beneath it. Modern language struggles here, so I will be precise. Consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. Matter responds to it. Every decision you make, every belief you carry shapes behavior, timing, perception. Multiply that effect by absolute coherence, when thought, emotion, and bodily state no longer contradict each other, and something unusual happens. Action becomes inevitable. Outcomes accelerate. Probability bends. This is why desperate prayer fails. Desperation fractures coherence. It signals lack. It tells the nervous system, the body, the mind that the desired state is absent and distant. The system then organizes itself around waiting, not receiving. Jesus did the opposite. He entered a state where the result was internally complete before it appeared externally. Neurologically, emotionally, somatically, the event was finished. What followed was not a miracle, but a delayed reflection. You have been taught that belief is mental. It is not. Belief is biological. It lives in breath, posture, muscle tone, heart rhythm. When these signals agree, the body behaves as if the future has already arrived. That behavior changes decisions, timing, encounters. From the outside, it looks impossible. From the inside, it feels obvious. This is why Jesus never begged, never rushed, never doubted aloud. He spoke in past tense because his inner state had already crossed the threshold. The world merely followed. This is not superstition. It is coherence taken to its extreme. And coherence, once reached, does not ask reality for permission. Now we arrive at the moment they never taught you to notice. Not the miracle itself, but the silence that came before it. This is where everything changes. Before Jesus spoke a word, before hands were laid on flesh, before commands were issued to storms or sickness, he withdrew. Not physically alone only, but inwardly absent from the noise of the world. The crowd disappears here. Time softens. Urgency dissolves. What remains is a depth so still it feels empty to the untrained mind. But it is not empty. It is saturated. In this inner withdrawal, thought does not argue. Emotion does not plead. The body does not brace for disappointment. There is no negotiation with the future. There is only a settled knowing, not hope, not belief, knowing. The same knowing you have when you remember your own name. You do not convince yourself of it. You rest inside it. This is the state Jesus entered. And once there, something irreversible occurred. The outcome was no longer anticipated. It was assumed. The body responded first. Breath slowed. The chest softened. The posture changed subtly, unconsciously. Authority emerged without effort. This is why witnesses describe him as calm, unhurried, certain. Power did not surge outward. Resistance vanished inward. Then he spoke, and this is critical. He did not speak to create the miracle. He spoke because the miracle was already complete within him. Words were not spells. They were confirmations, signals to the external world of an internal conclusion that had already been reached. This is why he often said nothing at all. Silence was sufficient. When words were used, they carried no strain, no emotional charge, no anxiety, only clarity. And clarity, when absolute, reorganizes reality around it. Do not misunderstand this moment. This is not visualization. This is not imagination. This is not positive thinking. Those still contain effort. What Jesus demonstrated was the absence of effort, a state where the question had already ended. This is the secret that could not be institutionalized. You cannot build hierarchy on a state that dissolves fear. You cannot control those who no longer wait for permission. So the state was replaced with ritual. The silence was replaced with repetition. The knowing was replaced with hope. But the original pattern is still here, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now I turn to you, not as a follower, not as a petitioner, but as someone who is capable of standing where Jesus stood, if you are willing to accept the responsibility that comes with it. This is not something you perform, it is something you enter. The first movement is withdrawal, but not escape. You do not run from life, you step beneath it. You remove attention from noise, from urgency, from the internal narration that keeps asking when, how, and why. The moment you ask those questions, you have already stepped out of the state. So you let them fall, not by force, by disinterest. As the questions dissolve, something unfamiliar appears, a quiet that feels almost uncomfortable at first because you are no longer negotiating with reality. Stay there. This is the inner room, not a place, but a condition where no audience exists. No future is being rehearsed, no outcome is being measured. Then comes the shift that separates this from everything you were taught. You do not imagine the result. You do not picture it arriving. You allow the sense that it is already settled, not emotionally excited, not dramatic, ordinary, finished. The body recognizes this immediately. Breath changes, muscles release. The need to check disappears. This is the signal that matters. At this point, you do not ask. Asking would imply lack. You acknowledge. Sometimes silently, sometimes with a simple phrase that carries no urgency. Not to persuade anything, but to align yourself with what is already true in this state. If doubt appears, you do not fight it. You return to stillness. Doubt cannot survive where no argument is happening. Then you move back into the world. And this is where most people fail. They look for proof. You do not. You act as someone who knows the conclusion, not someone who is waiting for it. Your choices subtly change. Your timing shifts. You stop forcing. From the outside, nothing looks mystical. From the inside, you are no longer divided. This is why I warned you. Once you practice this correctly, you cannot go back to begging. You cannot unlearn the difference between hope and knowing. And you cannot pretend you are powerless again. This is not a gift. It is a responsibility, and it was always meant to be yours. What I have given you is not comfort. It is not reassurance. It is not belief wrapped in poetry. It is a remembering. And remembering is dangerous to any system built on your dependence. This knowledge was never meant for everyone, not because it is elite, but because it dissolves fear, and a person who is no longer ruled by fear cannot be managed, cannot be delayed, cannot be convinced to wait endlessly for permission. That is why this teaching was softened, ritualized, externalized. Not to protect you, but to contain you. If you have followed me this far, it is not by accident. Something in you recognized the pattern before the words arrived. You felt it when I spoke of silence, of knowing, of completion. That recognition is not belief-forming, it is memory resurfacing. And memory, once activated, does not return to sleep. Do not rush to explain this to others. Do not argue. Do not attempt to prove anything. This is not a doctrine to defend. It is a state to live from. Those who are ready will feel it without being convinced. Those who are not will dismiss it without understanding. That has always been the dividing line. If you choose to walk with this, your life will begin to reorganize quietly, not through spectacle, but through precision, less force, fewer words, clearer timing. You will stop asking why things have not happened and start noticing how effortlessly certain doors open when you are no longer pushing. Before you leave, mark this moment, not for me, for yourself. Write a single sentence in the comments, not a question, not a confession, but a declaration that you are done waiting to be answered from the outside. This is not engagement, it is commitment. A signal to your own nervous system that you are stepping out of the old pattern. The prayer you were taught to repeat was never the source of power. The state you have just remembered is,